But let's get into the big news of the weekend, which was, one of the bigger trades in recent memory. Jamal Adams to the Seattle Seahawks for 2 1s, a 3, and a player. So let's start with it from Seattle's side. And I've been thinking about this actually over the last year, but definitely since the virus hit. And when the virus hit with the stock market, I've actually been very, very aggressive. I've bet a lot of money in the market, and not in the short term. I'm not trying to day trade, but just big picture. I bought in with a lot of cash that I had in savings, a lot of cash that I've made since, and I've been very, very aggressive. And I've kind of been like that in my life professionally. Like I moved to Philadelphia when I was in my early 20s. It didn't matter. No family, just picked up and left. I started my own podcast company with my partner on the Haberman Middlekauff show. We had a radio show. We just run our own podcast business ourselves. And I didn't even flinch, didn't hesitate. But it's easy for me to be able to do that. I'm a single guy. I don't have a family. I don't have a wife or kids who depend on me. And sometimes I think, and I've thought about this a lot over the last couple months, would I be that aggressive if I had kids? And will I be able to keep that aggression as I age and I have more response and I have other humans depending on me? My children, my unborn children. And I admire people in this world that have a lot to lose and keep their foot on the pedal. I really do. It's easy to put all your chips in the middle of the table when it's just you. And if you lose, so what? I can make more money. If all my money disappears in the stock market, it won't really change my life that much. But if you bet the mortgage when you have 2 children or their college fund, it's a problem. It's broken up some marriages. It's why I appreciate and admire people in business. Like, it's why I have a lot of respect for Jerry Jones as a businessman. He has stayed aggressive as he's had a lot to lose. We all know those people in our local communities that are just known as kind of mavericks and have huge balls. And again, it's easy to do when you're in your 20s or 30s. It's another thing when you're 55 and have a business and have a family that if it goes under, you got problems. And I'll say one thing for John Schneider and Pete Carroll. They did not have to do this. They go to the playoffs every year. They've missed the playoffs one time over the last decade. In that year, they went 9-7. They have a Hall of Fame quarterback. They're going to be a double-digit win team for the foreseeable future. Like, it was not going to stop. Whether Jamal Adams was on the team or whether they use their late first-round picks on crappy players because they don't draft that well in the first round. Now, listen, we can debate all day long how much they paid, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I will tip my hat to them for this. They put all their chips in the middle of the table because they know, well, we'll make the playoffs next year. Hell, we might beat the Niners, but, it's a crapshoot once we get there. But they didn't think like that. They go, this player, who we've had a lot of success with before, that exact type player, little crazy, really physical, big personality. Cam Chancellor, Michael Bennett, Richard Sherman, those guys thrived under Pete Carroll. Think of Pete Carroll's USC teams, basically a pro team with a bunch of big personalities, kicked everyone's ass. And when you look at it internally, you go, yeah, we gave up 2 first-rounders and a third-rounder, and everyone's like, we overpaid. Well, we have these late first-rounders, I don't know, because we win every year, and for the most part, that pick in the late 20s is not like a pick number 8 or 10. We never draft there. We're not giving the, pick 9 and 12 the next 2 years. You know why I know that? Because their last couple picks have been pick 27, and their worst pick of like the last 6 or 7 years was 21 2 years ago. They're typically picking between 25 and 32. So they go, we're not going to be bad. Why? Because we have the second best quarterback in the league. We have one of the best coaches in the league, and we have one of the better cultures in the league. We win. And we compete with, they had a weird team, right? Because they had a 7-point differential at the end of the year. I think the Niners was like 150. And the Seattle, they can play the Patriots or the Niners or the Saints or whoever's a good team, and they can beat them. They can play right with them. But they also, you can turn on their games on like a Sunday morning when they're playing the Redskins or the Panthers, and they can be down 14 points in the second half. They're a weird team that way. Now, they end up winning a lot of those games, but it's a weird deal. And maybe Pete Carroll would tell you, we need Jamal Adams to give us a little juice, to give us a little oomph. We don't have Richard Sherman walking through that door anymore. We don't have Cam Chancellor walking through that door anymore. We don't have Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill walking through the door. We've lost some of our identity on defense and some of our vocal leaders. Bobby Wagner, great player, but he can't do it all by himself. Russell Wilson somehow can. Defensively, takes a little bit more than just one guy. You can have J.J. Watt or you can have Khalil Mack. If you don't have help around those guys, you're limited. The reason LOB was so good is they had like 8 of their 11 guys were studs. Hell, it might have been like 10 of 11 if we really look back. Their one question was like, who was their opposite corner? Every other position stacked. And I think they go, listen, the NFL is not a plug-and-play league, but one thing it is, when a certain player fits your scheme, it can be. And we've learned that the last several years. When a guy fits the scheme, you plug it in, and he kicks ass immediately. Vic Fangio goes, yeah, I can handle Khalil Mack. Boom, bang, kicking everyone's butt. I think the Indianapolis Colts view the same thing with DeForest Buckner. One gap, up the field scheme, let's get him. And I admire teams, and Belichick's been doing this forever. Like, it's easy to kind of just stay in the middle lane, knowing you're going to have a chance every year. It's another thing to get up to your at-bat and go, you know what? I'm not trying to walk. I'm trying to hit this ball out of the stands. And John Schneider and Pete Carroll, since they've taken over, they've traded how many first-round picks for players? Now, they haven't all worked. But when you look at, and I hear this all the time, well, they missed on Percy Harvin and they missed on Jimmy Graham. Yeah, I mean, Percy couldn't stay healthy. Jimmy Graham was kind of screwed before he showed up because the entire defensive unit thought he was a wuss. I mean, they hated the guy, and he got injured and it wasn't the same. But I admired that they tried to get their star quarterback help. And once their quarterback, you realize, like, we can just draft DK Metcalfs and Chris Carsons and we'll kick your butt. We need to be more aggressive on defense. Because one thing we know, top defensive players, Khalil Mack, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, like, you just look around the NFL. Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa. What do those guys all have in common? They never last to the 20s. And what does John Schneider, and what has he consistently said the last 3 or 4 years? He says this on record. He goes, why do you always trade back, John? Why do you always trade back? Because every year we have 16 to 20 first-round players graded on our board. And we're never drafted in there. So we don't want to take a player at the end of the first round and pay him first-round money who we view as a second-rounder. It's why we trade back all the time. Or it's why we trade, that pick for players. And we understand it's a crapshoot when you're drafting 25. It's not the same as drafting a top 10 player. So we get Jamal Adams, who's our type culture guy, who Pete Carroll knows is going to thrive in this defense, and who helps our defense. When we had a chance to win Super Bowls, our defense was good. Our quarterback now is dramatically better than he was back then, but our defense is dramatically worse. So if maybe we can meet in the middle, we'll have a chance. And you go, well, look at San Francisco last year. They went 13-3. They kicked the crap out of the Vikings and the Packers to get to the Super Bowl. And Seattle went without a guy like Jamal Adams. It was a coin flip game. We beat them once in overtime, and they beat us once in Seattle when we came away 6 inches away from winning that game and sweeping them. And we would have been had a home field bye. So yeah, we got to take a swing. Our coach is in his late 60s. John Schneider makes a ton of money. They're trying to win, and I admire that. And listen, I said the same thing last year when I got on the Pittsburgh Steelers for Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I thought it was reckless, and I was wrong. Why? Because Minkah Fitzpatrick helped change their team. Because their offense stunk. Their quarterback and passing game was atrocious. Their defense was elite, and he dominated. And I didn't think about this. This wasn't my idea or thought. Bucky Brooks tweeted out that people have told him in the league, and it makes so much sense, that these playmaking safeties, as the game is spread out, as these quarterbacks have become more athletic, you need guys that can make plays in space. It's why linebackers now, the two-down middle linebacker, stuff in the run, those days are dead. I need guys that can run. Look at the linebackers who were drafted the last couple of years early in the draft. They all can cover and play sideline to sideline. Well, what does Jamal Adams and Minkah Fitzpatrick do? They're borderline linebackers, and they can play against tight ends, and they can cover in the slot. Now, do I love giving up 2 first-rounders and a third-rounder? No, I don't. But unlike the Rams, who did it for Jalen Ramsey, and listen, Jalen Ramsey plays a more important position than Jamal Adams. The Rams have made the playoffs like 2 times in the last 2 decades. Seattle literally goes to the playoffs every year. And this is what they know. Pete Carroll has a soft spot for premium players. Because say what you want about Jimmy Graham and say what you want about Percy Harvin, they didn't work out. Those guys were blue chip talents. And they did it again here for a blue chip talent. And I admire that because they didn't have to do it. They easily could have just win your 10 games, take your chances, maybe win a round, get knocked out in the second round. They ain't thinking like that. And it's easy. Most people just job security, just, if I'm John Schneider, make my $3 million. If I'm Pete Carroll, just cruise, keep racking up some wins. It's easy to have balls when your team sucks and just trading guys like you're the Jaguars. Nobody cares. Or even when John Gruden traded Khalil Mack. It's like, your team's terrible. Who cares? Whatever. It wasn't going to have that much impact either way, regardless of what we think about the deal. It's much, much more difficult to make these crazy trades when you're one of the top teams in the league. And listen, whether it works out or not, it takes a couple years to know. Nobody knows right now. We can give our opinions. That's all I'm doing, giving my opinion on what I think is going to happen. I think Jamal Adams is going to be a really good player for the Seattle Seahawks. Just like I think the Jets, easy deal for them to make for a guy that didn't want to be there. But first and foremost, I can't say it enough, and I tweeted it this weekend. I admire the mindset of Seattle, of John Schneider, of Pete Carroll, of the front office, and the way they run their franchise. What's up, everybody? My name is John Middlekauff, and I host a show for Colin Cowherd called 3 and Out on his podcast network. You can subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. I worked in the NFL as a scout for Andy Reid and Howie Roseman, and I've been talking about football for the last 7 years. If you like your football talk, raw and unfiltered, no BS, I'm your guy. Subscribe to 3 and Out right now.